We read this one. Proponents of sutra, proponents of mind only, autonomists, all agree in the presentation of the 3 times and of non-affirming negatives. So this we all covered from Sutrantika and Avabhashka, right? This about the non-affirming negatives and these things. Next, the 5 sense objects, forms and so forth, do not exist as external objects because they are produced within the substantial entity of an internal consciousness, meaning that things like given rise to by our, the imprints of our mind. Actually, we were discussing this part yesterday. Internal consciousness through the power of predisposing latencies, referring to imprints. Predisposing latencies established by common and uncommon actions in the mind basis. Mind basis of all. Do you all get where we are reading? Okay, good. So actually, yesterday we were discussing about the substantial cause and the cooperative the causes. Say, for the flower, we need a seed. And also, we need water, sunlight, and all these things. And what is going to happen to the seed later on? Yeah, it will sprout, and finally it will become a flower, right? So the shoot or the sprout, for that to come into being, the seed serves as the substantial cause. The seed is the one which transforms into that. And the other things like, the one who planted the seed and the fence around the seed, around the sprout, they all serve as cooperative causes, right? So go even deeper, then things can become a little bit complicated to tease apart what constitutes the substantial and what constitutes the cooperative causes. The one which the one among the causes which transforms into the the main result, and the other simply helps for this transformation. So the others which help into this transformation, they are known as the cooperative causes, and whereas the ones which actually transforms into the result is the substantial cause. Just as for the flower, the seed is the substantial cause, and the water, this is quite an issue. So usually we consider that as cooperative cause. But the question is, what? Is that really a cooperative cause or substantial cause?
Without the water.
Without the water? But without the carpenter, the wooden house will not come about. But the carpenter doesn't have to transform into the house, right? So the carpenter is not a substantial cause of the wooden house, but still, without the carpenter, we cannot really have, something of that kind of house.
From the water grow, if we press, you can find the molecule from the water. You can find.
Yeah. This is the issue. Yeah.
It's not much logic that a substantial cause be just one. Could be more.
Oh, yes, I agree with you. Substantial cause for a particular result, substantial cause may not necessarily be just one. That's for sure. But if you got the impression that, by substantial cause, I'm simply pointing to just one, this is not right. Substantial cause for something, there could be just numerous, right? The issue is the water. Is this a cooperative cause or a substantial cause of a sprout? Usually Usually we say it is cooperative. So anyone who stick to this, or who wants to say that no, 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 who wants to revolutionize the idea? Yes. Yes, 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 Dallas.
Well, I'm going to stick with cooperative because the seed can blow to another place where there is water. But if you just have water and never a seed, nothing's going to happen.
That's also, yeah,
Or the
very
bird
intelligent.
can eat the seed and fly to Asia
Yeah.
and hit a lake.
Yeah. That's really makes sense. But without water, can it grow? Without water, can it grow?
But we live in a planet where there is water.
Say, the American water may not necessarily be the substantial cause of that thing. Because, the very strong bird can eat it and, fly to Asia and then later drop it there as a dropping. And then the Asian water can nurture it, right? Yeah, very good point. Anyone would like to say something else?
I think that each plant, as humans, we are substantially water.
Yes.
We get dehydrated to a point we will die, as the plant will die if it's dehydrated to a point.
You're right, absolutely, yeah. So, say, you're right, cucumber. Cucumber. This is what I learned from my childhood. Is about 98 or 99% water, as Nancy said. 98 or 99% water. Similarly, we, the human beings, maybe 60, 70% water, or even 80% water. I'm not too sure. Which means that without water, our figure would be very different. If you extract all water from cucumber, it will be just small. So this means that cucumber, to be in that size or to be with that color and so forth, the water plays a very important role as a part of it. So the water really transformed into a part of cucumber, right? Just as the seed of cucumber transformed into cucumber, the water which is added, which contributed to the seed sprouting into cucumber, also contributed to this. So from that perspective, we have to say, yes, the water, the particular water, which formed a part of cucumber, that is substantial, substantial cause of cucumber.
But all the water that's now been gone, used to grow it, but then evaporated.
But say, out of 2 big or 10 big buckets of water that you put, finally it grew to one very delicious cucumber. So there, the water content is say like 1 liter, right? So out of these hundreds of gallons of water, 1 liter transformed into that. So we don't know which water, So of course, among them, 1 liter of it served as the substantial cause, and the rest served as cooperative cause. So for the time being, let's agree on that. Okay. Right. Okay. So now similarly. So this is with the external things like flower, fruits, and so forth. And then we are in the world of Chittamatharas, which means that everything, yesterday we discussed as to how the image in the mirror and the mirror itself and the image in the mirror, these two cannot be separated. These two are inalienably, what is that? Inalienable, inalienably, these two are indistinguishable, right? Inseparable. And yet, the image on the mirror is not a mirror. That we have agreed, right? So likewise, everything that we see around, that we experience, that we see, that we hear, that we smell, you know, even on the other side of the world, even in the other planets, in other galaxies, you know, so they're all just indistinguishable. They're all just inseparable from our minds. And yet they are not our minds. This we should be well aware of, you know. Okay, so now the question is, since everything is of the nature of the mind plays a very important role. And we should know, so we should get a very clear picture of how the mind comes into being, right? So, since mind as well, since the mind being impermanent, it must have be given rise, it is also other-powered, right? So being other-powered, it means it is dependent on causes and conditions. It comes into being by the power of causes and conditions. So what are the, and among the causes we said, there are substantial and cooperative causes. So as for the mind, for example, perceiving this table, right? Perceiving this table, or perceiving yourself, right? Perceiving yourself or perceiving the table. Yesterday we were doing this. You close your eyes, then all of a sudden you know, open your eyes, and the first object that you see is the table. So here the consciousness, eye consciousness perceiving the table arose. So for that to arise, there must be the substantial cause and the cooperative cause. So what is the substantial cause to this? This mind, you know, the first moment of the eye consciousness, perceiving the table, and what is the cooperative cause for this eye consciousness perceiving the table? This is our homework, yesterday's homework, right? So, anyone? So first, let's see, you know, say, we keep on looking at the flower, you know, we keep on looking at the flower. The first moment of the mind perceiving the flower, second moment of the mind perceiving the flower, and so forth. So what is the substantial cause of the second moment of the mind perceiving the flower? The first moment of the mind perceiving the flower. Very easy, right? Okay. Now, what is the substantial cause of the first moment of the mind perceiving the flower?
The mind.
Which mind?
The mind perceiving the flower.
Is that cause?
The mind that has previously perceived the flower.
That's
the memory.
good. That's good. Sorry?
We could say the alliance, since they assert the existence of the alliance.
What?
Alaya,
Alayavijnana. I see. Oh. What is that? Yeah. So what? Say it complete.
Since they are Chitta mantras and we are
Yeah.
that would be said, isn't it? Since it says like, I mean, if I have
The imprint.
if we have
What? I see. Oh, very good. So you mean to say that the Alayavijnana, the basis of all mind, you know, which is like the ocean. This ocean gives rise to, because of the wind, the ocean on the surface gives rise to different waves, you know. Similarly, our Alayavijnana, the basis of all consciousness, you know, which is so profound and vast. So, because of the karmic wind, because of the karmic wind, then it stirs the surface of our Alayavijnana and started creating all different waves with different colors and different shapes, right? So these waves and the colors and the shapes, different shapes of the wave, they are analogous to the different minds and the different objects that we see around, that we perceive, right? Very good. Okay. Very good. Still, I'm unable to really, you know, point to exactly what I'm supposed to point to. But you came up with a very good idea. Yes.
It would remain the question like those of schools who do not assert the existence of this consciousness, and how do they explain this?
Very good. Very good, very good. So I would say, according to other schools' point of view, who don't believe, who don't propose this idea of the Alayavijnana, or the base of all consciousness, so we simply extend it to the mind, the mental consciousness. But the mental consciousness don't simply think of the way it is understood by, the way the Chittamatras, they understand Alayavijnana. Not all Chittamatras, there are two Chittamatras, one following the reason and one following the sutra. It is only the Chittamatra following the sutra who believes in Alayavijnana, right? So simply extend the same thing to the mental consciousness when explaining how the different minds come about, in the other schools who don't believe, who don't propose the idea of Alayavijnana. So the same mind, mental consciousness, because of the karmic force, something is disturbed, and then eye consciousness, the different consciousnesses or the minds arise. Not necessarily external things, the table and these things. Whereas it is only those who propose the absence of external reality that they say that while the mind comes into being, the mind along with the objects also come. Right? For example, if there is the mirror, along with the mirror, image of the mirror also comes automatically. Right? Okay, so this is from the point of view of Chittamatra. Okay, so now let's see, instead of, just imagine a very extreme, radical kind of example, Imagine, instead of this vast water, say it's just a flat steel or iron, what will happen if there's a wind? Wave coming? No, why? It's solid, it has no potential to give rise to, what? The waves. So, for one to have, because of the wind, the wind coming into contact with you and you giving rise to wave, for that you need to have the potential to give rise to wave. Right? So, this ocean-like mind, Alayavijnana, or the mental consciousness, so it has the potential, right? Very good. I'm really thankful to Christina. So it has the potential to give rise to, these waves of the minds, the different states of the mind. So these, the potential to give rise to these different, waves of the minds or the different minds is known as the mental imprints. In short, the substantial cause of the eye consciousness perceiving, first moment of the eye consciousness perceiving the flower is the mental imprint which gives rise to the first moment of the eye consciousness perceiving the flower. Right? Let me say it again. The substantial cause of the first moment of the eye consciousness perceiving the flower is the mental disposition, mental imprint, which gives rise to this first moment of the mental consciousness, first moment of the eye consciousness perceiving the flower. Right? Okay. Now look, it is not just the mind, that we need to explore. We need to explore something more. What is that? The imprints as well. So another question is, how come this imprint there, Is it gifted by the gods? Or Buddhas? Or your friends? Good. So, say you are so habituated, you are so accustomed in the study of mathematics when you were young, right? And then for the next 5 or 10 years, you are unable to get any access to mathematics. You almost forget it. You almost forgot it. And then, again, the next time, you and someone else who is not at all introduced to mathematics throughout his or her life were both introduced to mathematics. Who's going to learn faster? You. Why? Imprints. Imprints of what? Who gave you the imprints? Are you the gifted one, the chosen one? Yes, one's own habituation, the mental exercise that you already had earlier. So likewise, all these imprints are not given to you by someone, bestowed upon you by your friends. but rather it is bestowed upon you by your own previous being in your former lifetimes, right? So this imprint. Now the question is, but the imprint is not that if you are used to mathematics in the earlier part of life, after 10 years, then you learn, then you learn Buddhist philosophy. You learn so quickly. Is that the case? No, totally unrelated. Because you have the imprints of mathematics. But it will not help you, So the imprints must be something concomitant in nature. The imprints, those minds which laid the imprints, they must share nature with the result this imprint is going to give rise to. So later on when you were taught mathematics, you learn so quickly, which means that you have a very profound imprint in mathematics. Is that imprint on the imprint of mathematics, is that laid by your knowledge of physics, knowledge of how to cook well?
No.
Why not?
You're not concomitant.
Exactly. These two are not at all similar in nature. These two are not concomitant in nature, right? So the mind which laid the imprints must share its nature with the result this imprint is going to give rise to. So if the imprint is to be kind towards others, you have been so kind in your former lifetimes, and then you die, what happened to those virtuous mental mindsets? Will then change into imprints. It'll be laid in the form of imprints. And the next life, you don't really need to train so much in compassion. These things, they simply become outpouring in you. Why? Because the kind of kindness that you are experiencing in the next life, it is very much the same nature as the kindness that you practice in your former lives. This is quite acceptable, right? There is no argument. Okay, now one argument. Well, in this life, we all see computers. Is it the case that, so the computer, of course, what we see of the computer that is given rise to, it is nothing separate, it is not separate from our mind. Which means that, it is given rise to by a mental disposition or mental imprint. The computer, along the computer and the mind perceiving the computer, these two are of the same nature, right? So just as the mind perceiving the computer is given rise to by the substantial cause, in the form of imprint, right? So, which means that we had this imprint to see computer. So when was that imprint laid? In a former lifetimes? Are you sure no? Are you sure?
Well, it could have been an abacus.
Sorry?
What if it was an abacus? I mean, something that was the precursor, not the computer, but something
else.
Something that was related to that.
Something related to. I see. Wonderful. So you learn about, the absence of the absence of Atma, and then you understand the ultimate emptiness because these are related. Is it possible? Or then you simply learn 2 + 2 = 4, and then the result next day you become professor in mathematics. Is it possible? These two are connected.
This is the point of the Chitta mantras. But you could say that
Oh please, we are in the world of Chitta Mantra. Don't abuse Chitta Mantra.
say that it's the imprint to see something, not to see a particular object. But then the Chitta mantra says that you can't see the object.
What?
For instance, the ability to see or to perceive a computer
Yeah.
the imprint can
Yeah.
just the ability to see, not necessarily a computer, but to see something else. But then
So this is what I'm telling you.
yes.
This is what I'm telling you. Say, if you see beautiful, if you see a horrible flower today, then you close your eyes and you look at it, automatically you see a beautiful flower, because you have the ability to see something, So don't abuse Chittamatra. It's amazing, amazing philosophy, And there are real philosophers like Chandragomi, who debated with Prasangika, Chandrakirti, debated for 7 years. Imagine. It's not an easy philosophy to abuse Chittamatra. I wish Chandragomi is there, It's I wish Chandragomi. He's one of the most popular Chittamatrins. If he is there, then he will really make you flat. Oh, yeah.
So the answer to your question is, what are the imprints? Do there have to be a reform? I mean, it's sort of like the man who invented the computer.
Yeah.
Where did he get his imprints to be able to actually do that? I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
A functional thing, where do the imprints come from to create from your mind something new into the world?
Yes.
If we always had dudes, we could never have new things if we had
Yes, this is also one qualm.
we couldn't have
Is one qualm. So better we invite Chandragomi.
to tell us how to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So let me put it this way. I don't know if this is a standard answer given by Chittamatrins or Chandragomi, but let me put it this way. I buy a brand new computer, from a shop. What did I buy? A brand new computer, So in it there are many screws and such things, So then one day what happened was that my computer breaks. And then I take things apart, right? Right? And then I got a wonderful screw out of that. And I bang it there on my wall and use that to hang my clothes. And somebody asked me, where did you get this? From where did you buy it? I didn't buy it from anywhere. Actually, the source is the computer. But the computer man, he didn't sell me, oh, this is a screw for your computer, like that. So then I have a horrible object over there. The horrible thing is also what I didn't buy from, the shop. But that evolved that way, gradually it evolved, It started changing its form and these things. Similarly, our imprint, our imprint is also, first it is so fresh. And then gradually, over time, if it is not used, then it will become deformed. It starts deforming in its nature. Every time it deforms, the corresponding mind that it is going to give rise to is going to be slightly different from the fresh, from the mind which is supposed to be given rise to by the fresh imprint. The fresh mind, the fresh imprint will give rise to a very fresh mind, and a little bit distorted, gradually deformed or distorted imprint or more sluggish imprint will give rise to a more sluggish object. Originally, it is implanted as a very fresh imprint, right? So from one single computer we can get different things, screws and very interesting objects from there. Similarly, the same imprint, because of its deterioration, because of its because of its not being used so often, it loses its rigor, it loses its freshness, and then accordingly a more dull mind can be given rise to, and accordingly correspondingly a more dull object is also given rise to, because the object and the mind, these two are of the same nature, right? This is what I feel. Yeah. And then of course we cannot say that This is the first time ever in the, in the history of time that computer, invented for the first time. So who knows? In the former eons, science was even more developed than the what is developed now. Who knows? From Buddhist perspective, actually that seems like 15 years ago. Once I was, sent by my teacher to give a talk at what? Gandhian Institute of Gandhian Studies. So there, I started giving a talk on Buddhist concept, and then the questions came, and I was talking about how the mind, we cannot create new minds. It's just the same mind all the way down. And then someone asked me, then what about on this earth? The number of human beings increasing all the time. There's population increase. So from where, these new minds coming? They come if they're not created newly. And then I talked about the multiple world systems, the one world becoming, say, if there's a food, if there's a food and also moisture, then there's a tendency that there's going to be more worms coming there. And as the food gets dried and moisture also dried, then these worms also go away. So similarly, one world system, becoming so conducive for more, human lives, then from other planets, can come. And then whereas one world system becoming so unconducive for the life to form, then the lives will simply gradually disappear, and these minds will travel to somewhere which is more conducive. So this planet, presently, it is more conducive for life. So from other planets coming. And the director of that said, what? You are coming with this idea of the multiple world systems. Is this what you have created? Or is it said in the Buddhist text? He thought that I was creating, my... And I said, oh, don't worry. So this is what is said by very authoritative Buddhist text. Yeah. So in like manner, in terms of civilizations, it's not just the civilization that we can think of associated with this world. Many, many, many eons. Simply endlessly great numbers of eons were there in the past, bound to be in the future. So surely, science must have developed much more than what we have now in the past. Okay, this is one. And then another is, according to what I said, right? Say, I heard something from, from someone that 10 plus 30 is 40, say the 10 plus 18 is 28. And then I say, oh, but, and you all know that I'm a very slow learner. So 10 plus 18 equals 28, 10 plus 18 equals 28. And then, in the course of time, what did I learn? 10 plus 18 equals 28. And then I heard someone saying that, oh, tomorrow is going to be 20th, 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 And then I see, this is what I've learned. Look, 10 plus 18 equals 28. I see. And then how do you write it? 20th. I see, 10 plus 18 equals, 20th. And then I learned it. So this is how what I originally learned has deteriorated when that is joined or, when that is combined with some other imprints. So because of, combination of these some 2, 3, 4 different imprints, a new thing can come about, right, as a product of that. So this is also one possibility. Anyway, very good question, right? Is it the case that we can never see anything new? Our Prasanga asked this question. Yeah. And also someone abusing Chittamatras. But at least for the time being, don't abuse Chittamatara for the time being.
imprints, are these the cause of aging, sickness, and death? Does the same thing happen?
Very good question. Yeah. Very good question. In fact, the imprints, I was simply telling you the imprints as the substantial causes of these different minds. So within the world of imprints, again, there are different kinds. The imprints giving rise to self-grasping mind, the imprints giving rise to the different, the experiences of the ripening results, like sickness, aging, death, Yeah. So say, the imprint which gives rise to your life. Say, you as a human being. And this imprint, this very imprint which gives rise to your coming into being as a human being, this imprint itself is responsible for the aging, sickness, and death. Because once you create a beautiful computer, once you create that, then finally you have to dump it somewhere. You need a place to dump, because of the creation of that. If somebody has not created this computer, you don't have to look for the place to dump. Because of the nuclear thing, we have to look for, place to dump the nuclear waste. So likewise, after creating this body, the mind perceiving the body, along with the body, the human body, they have been created by the mental imprint, which gives rise to this mind perceiving the human body. So once that is created, and so that imprint is connected to karma, So as this karma exhausts, the imprint of the karma, giving rise to the mind perceiving the self as a human being, as that karma exhausts, what will happen?
Deterioration of that.
Yeah. Then the deterioration of this, the mind perceiving your body and the body itself, these two, will simply, start degenerating in quality. So the degeneration of this quality is what is known as aging. And then at one point, there is excessive, degeneration, sickness, and then complete degeneration, which is death.
So
right?
The degeneration of the imprint itself, of the whatever, the imprint.
Exhaustion.
Exhaustion is this mind.
Exactly. Exhaustion of the karma, whose imprint is on the consciousness and giving rise to this, the mind perceiving the self, the mind perceiving the body. As the karma exhausts, the imprint of this karma is said to be exhausting. And as that is exhausted, then the result, say, what will happen? If there's a torchlight, and the batteries, they are really brand new, and the bulb also brand new, and there's a beautiful picture over there. If you, if you try to look at the picture with this brand new torch, how clear will you see the picture? Very clear. And then you keep on, with this, what will happen? Yeah, the light will become fainter and fainter and fainter. As the light becomes fainter, what happened to the picture over there?
Less clear.
Yeah. And again, less and less clear. So it's not that actually the paint over there is becoming less and less clear. It's because of this torch, Similarly, there is no real picture over there. It is what this, projector is projecting. So this projector, what is the power? It's the karma, The karma is the actual projector of the whole picture of this world, to our consciousnesses. So as this karma gets exhausted, slowly getting exhausted, say the karma that propels the human life, in this era, is the lifespan of that is said to be about 100. So presently it is said to be, the general life expectancy, according to Buddhist teachings, is 100 years, right? So this is kind of the energy for, say, a battery. A battery can last 1 hour, right? So then as the end of the hour approaches, what will happen to the battery? it becomes dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. Similarly, the karma to propel the human life, generally speaking, the life expectancy is 100 years. So the karma can, retain in that for 100 years. But then as the 100 years, the 100th year, approaches, what will happen? This karma then, comes into exhausting, every time exhausting. So, the closer you get toward the 100th year, the more exhausted you are. So which means that exhaustion will be reflected in the form of a very pale, faint picture over there. Similarly, it will be reflected in our body in the form of a very haggard, old figure. Right? So this is the reflection of the karma getting exhausted. Because this is the one which gave the life. This karma is the one which gives life to us, as human beings.
It's just like shouldn't be bad with everything, but then the afflictions, like if you just suppress them, like okay, you just cut the concentration, then you don't remove them, so they don't degenerate, right?
The afflictions.
Yeah. So
Afflictions don't generate?
don't degenerate, right? Because we say that just for instance, someone just cultivating concentration doesn't remove the afflictions and the imprints and so on.
True.
So it means that the afflictions and the stains and whatever, they don't degenerate.
Very good question. Yeah. Then, so I should run away. Okay, so the question is very intelligent. What? If the karma gets degenerated, then the afflictions as well, they will get degenerated. So one day without any effort, the affliction's gone. Oh, that's wonderful.
Isn't like karma and afflictions are synonymous?
No. Oh, that's really, yeah. So, okay, first to give you the brief picture, say afflictions, they are defined as mental factors, the presence of which will disturb your peace of mind. Afflictions are defined as mental factors, the presence of which will disturb your mental peace. Okay? And the karma is the energy, is the mental energy accumulated by the force okay, I think this karma needs to be defined a little bit more, in a more wider way. Karma is a physical, verbal, or mental energy motivated by intention. Karma is a physical, verbal, and mental energy motivated by intention. Okay, so now we need to first of all make a distinction between the two, the karma and the afflictions, and then on the basis of this, then we need to explain as to why karma can get exhausted, and while the afflictions, without special effort, it will not exhaust. It can, even increase. Okay, very good question. Anyone who can help me?
Well, there's something about that eighth consciousness that the Chittamachas have that is the afflicted mental states.
Yes.
That's separate from the other consciousness and the mental consciousness.
Yes, from the point of view of um,
That's one.
sutra, you know, sutra follower Chittamatra, there is afflicted. So say there are 8 mental consciousnesses. 8 consciousnesses. According to this sutra follower Chittamatra, 8 consciousnesses. 5 sense consciousnesses, plus the 6th one is mental consciousness, 6th. 7th one is Alayavijnana, or the basis of all consciousness. And the 8th one is the consciousness viewing at this Alayavijnana to exist as autonomous, self-sufficient substantial nature. The 8th one is afflicted consciousness, which views this Alayavijnana as the self-sufficient substantial person. Right? Okay. Now look. What will happen? Say, if you know, there. Say, you go to a gas station, and then you fill your car with the gas, and then you drive, say 1,000 kilometers or miles. What will happen to the gas? It'll get used up, you know. So then, as you use it, it gets exhausted, right? Okay.
Okay. So this mind basis of all has the feeling of a soul to it.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Very true. In fact, Buddha, he came on this earth not seem to look for his fans. Oh, where those people who would form my group. It's not that he came on this earth to look for this group known as the Buddhist, but he came on this earth to benefit all sentient beings, right? And all these sentient beings, they have all different mentalities, depending on what circumstance one is brought up in. Some, they were so much used, or they were so much introduced to the idea of soul, idea of Atman in the former lifetimes. So naturally, this life, even if you encounter with Buddhist teachings, where there is no inherent self, there is no Atma, there is no soul, but still deep inside you saying that, there is something called soul, or without which, then it makes no sense. So this kind of very strong feeling, right, can happen. So because of the imprint from the former lifetimes, where you were so much taught, introduced to the idea of solid self, soul, Atman, and these things. So to help those people who have a strong inclination towards, the solid self, to help these people, the Buddha taught this Alayavijnana. Yeah, to ease these people. Or even the Buddha, talks about something like that. So that's really nice. And then you feel yourself a sense of belonging in this group, which seeks enlightenment, which seeks total freedom from suffering. So whereas, if wherever you go in the teachings of the Buddha, you find everything without, inherent nature, without, self like that, then you don't really feel a sense of belonging there. And because of which, you will not feel connected. Because of which, you will not practice it. And because of which, you will keep on entangled in samsara. Right? So this is the purpose. Buddha has actually come up with all, different things, and in the form of shares to everyone. Everyone has one's own share to learn from the Buddha. And for those who are used to all very solid sense of self, Atman, soul in the past lifetimes, the Buddha has this share of the Alayavijnana. Yeah, wonderful question. Okay, so what I'm going to say, again, let me summarize here. As for the mind, say the flower and the color of the flower. What do you think is the substantial cause or a substantial cause of these two? The flower and the color of the flower. Is it just the same or different? Same, yeah, same. Okay. Kevin was just saying different. Okay, different, yeah. So then what about the shape of the flower and the flower? Same. Okay. So actually I want to, bring something to let you say same. Okay, so you are happy with this one. The substantial cause of the flower and the substantial cause of the shape of the flower. It's just the same, right? Okay. So, whereas we cannot exactly say that the flower and the shape of the flower, these two are identical. We cannot say that, right? They are nominally distinct. Entity-wise, same. Nominally distinct. This is what we have learned. Okay. Like that, our mind perceiving the table and the mind, these two are like the shape of the flower and the flower. So just as the substantial cause of the flower and the shape of the flower is one, the substantial cause for the table and the mind perceiving the table is one. Right? So it's just the mental imprint which has the potential to give rise to the mind perceiving the flower, right? Mind perceiving the flower, or the mind perceiving the table, and then this imprint awakens. It awakens, and the mind perceiving the table comes about, and simultaneously, the table arises. The table and the mind perceiving the table arise simultaneously, given rise to by the same substantial cause, which is the imprint, mental imprint. Right? Okay. So we have this mental imprint as the substantial cause of the table as well as the mind perceiving the table. The same mental imprint. Right? Okay, so this is the substantial cause. Now look, if you look at this last para on the same page, the five sense objects, forms and so forth, do not exist as external objects. Why? Because they are produced, the substantial cause of the external objects and the mind's perceiving these external objects, it's just one. We see them as distinct, but in true sense, these two are of the same nature. And the substantial cause of these two is just one. Look, because they are produced within the substantial entity, meaning the substantial nature of an internal, given rise to substantially by internal consciousness through the power of predisposing latencies. Predisposing latencies referring to the imprints, mental imprints, established by common and uncommon actions in the mind basis of all. Okay, in the mind basis of all. The common and uncommon actions. Say, now this is another interesting topic. Say, you are simply, everyone else dislikes going to a stupor and make prostration. And actually you are there with other 99 people. And you go there and you are the only one, with the deep sense of faith and respect to the Buddha, and make prostrations. So, and the rest, and it also happens that you are the boss. So you instruct them. Or I know you don't like it, but you do it if you want to come with me. And then reluctantly everyone else did it without any faith. So, you all did the same action, but it is only you who really, implanted a fresh, strong imprint of faith in the Buddha. And what is the action you did? Physical action, and verbally you said something so virtuous, and mentally, you have a tremendous faith, and also you have all these three actions, bodily, verbal, and mental. And all these three actions, they're all motivated by genuine intention. So, bodily, verbal, mental actions are given rise to by mental intention is what is known as karma. So you have accumulated a very strong virtuous karma, right? And others, they also did the same thing, in the sense, moved their body, said something verbally, but mentally something negative, right? So what is the intention? Intention, is it something positive in the case of others? No. So the bodily, verbal, and mental actions, triggered by impure motivation, very destructive motivation, reluctance. So that doesn't really help the others to accumulate virtuous physical, verbal, mental karma, right? Okay. Now look, in the future, say in your next lives, again, 100 of you born in the same place, and then everyone else, they were suffering from all problems one way or the other, with not getting proper food to eat, not getting something to drink, not proper shelter, and whereas everything good is happening to you. So look, now while you are all in the same environment, but you are enjoying a lot, and others, they are suffering. So because this enjoyment or the suffering is a result of a karma, so the rest of the people, they are experiencing a common kind of result, suffering, which means a common result of common karma. And whereas the karma that you are experiencing, ripening, is something very different from others. So your karma, which is so virtuous, is the uncommon karma, uncommon, and whereas others, they are undergoing the same experience, the common karma, right? Actually, this is something very important part in the explanation on karma. What happened was that, again, with the same thing, I'll relate to you one story, common and uncommon karma. At the time of Buddha, there was one nun who finally achieved nirvana, arhatship. And the nun, she had about 500 other nuns as her students. And then in one hall, she was giving discourses to her students. And then, all of a sudden, a burglar or thief or, some mischievous people, they started burning the entire campus. And then they come to know about it only very late. And then the teacher, who's Arahat, already liberated. And she then realizing that, everyone is going to be dying, she, through her clairvoyant power, she told the students, now look, we are all experiencing the suffering or a consequence of a negative karma that we accumulated in one of the former lifetimes. So there is no escape. And this karma is so powerful that we can escape. simply bear in mind that this is the ripening of the negative karma that we ourselves accumulated in the former lives. And then, so that way, all simply died. And then there's one maid servant, a lady servant, who escaped from a tunnel, who was there, but she escaped. And I think the issue was, brought to the Buddha, and the Buddha revealed a former lives accumulation of the karma. Buddha, so in one of the former lifetimes, these 500, along with the teacher, they were all robbers at one point in the former lifetimes, one of the former lifetimes. And then, through consensus, they killed, one person. And among them, one retreated, one disagreed to kill, So the rest of the 499, they accumulated the common karma, the negative common karma of killing the person, and one retreated. So the servant who escaped from the tunnel is the one who happened to be dead. So even though under such a very difficult situation where you cannot really imagine any escape, she somehow escaped from a sewage tunnel. Yeah. So that lady who escaped, she was not involved in that accumulation of the common karma, negative common karma, and others, they experienced the result of the common karma of negative action of killing someone. Okay, then we read the true expectarians. Okay, are you all entitled of true expectarians and false expectarians? The true expectarians assert that the 5 sense objects, forms and so forth, are not external objects, but do exist as gross objects. So this is what we did partly last time. The false, so say the table, the table, does it appear to you as external entity or just part of your mind? External entity. So from the point of view of Chittamatra, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is a wrong perception, which means that the 5 sense objects, they all are simply the manifestation, simply the extension of one's own mind. Then the question is, the table, but does it exist? It does exist, yes. Is it mind? In Chittamatra world?
Yes.
Just raise your hands those who say yes. Raise your hands those who say no. 1, 2. Okay. The reflection in the mirror, is this mirror?
No.
Yes, no?
No.
Okay. So, reflection of the mirror, the image, the reflection. This is not a mirror. But can that be separate from the mirror? No. So this is indistinguishable, with the mirror. So likewise, the table, is it separate from the mind perceiving the table? No. Is it the mind perceiving the table? No. Right? Simply think of the mirror and the reflection in the mirror. So the table is not the mind, but the table is not separate from the mind. This is what we should be answering. Now the next question is, the table, is it gross, or is so subtle? Are you sure? Say you are Chittamatrans. What would be your response? Say this is just a part of your mind. Is your mental? It's just like image on the mirror, So what is that? Is that the table, which is like an image in the mirror of your mind? Is that gross or subtle? Subtle? Gross? Gross. What about Ren Rasimge? Thinking? Still thinking?
I'm still
Okay. So how many gross are prasangika? How many subtle? 1, 2. Nancy? Thinking. Okay. So all those who says it's gross, you belong to the true expectarians. Whereas who say subtle, I don't know if you belong to the true expectarians or the false expectarians. Let's see. The true expectarians assert that the 5 sense objects, forms and so forth, are not external objects but do exist as gross objects. The false expectarians maintain that if such were the case, then forms and so forth would have to be external objects. Good. So Venerable Chunyi truly gets there to false expectarian Chittamatharan's view. Then forms and so forth would have to be external objects. Therefore, they assert that the 5 types of sense objects do not exist as gross objects, although they do, of course, accept part and whole. Which means that, even though the false expectarians believe that the table is not gross, but still the table does have parts and the wholes. The table is the whole, and the top flat plank and the legs, they are the parts. So they do still accept the ideas of this thing. So just think about, either you think about the mirror and the image on the mirror, or you think about the dream and the dream object, So in dream, you dream of a table. In dream, you can think of, you can dream of, what? Huge apples, The huge apple, the elephant-sized apple in your dream, is that gross or subtle? Say, imagine you have already woken up, you have already woken up, and then you think about, oh, I dreamt of such a marvelous dream, elephant-sized apple, right? So is that gross or subtle from the point of view of you coming out of your dream? Is it gross or subtle? Just imagine. Subtle and others. Subtle? I see. So now, okay, yeah. So this is why I've been telling you right from the beginning that we are still in the world of Chittamatharans. We have to imagine that everything is simply just a reflection in your own mind. Okay. Right, yeah. Yeah, okay. Now assertions regarding object possessors, subjects. The followers of scripture, mainly the followers of Asanga, assert 8 consciousnesses, which I already mentioned. Therefore, they assert that the mental consciousness and the mind basis of all, which is Alayavijnana, is the person, right? So when they ask what is the person, they finally, particularly the scripture followers, they finally point to the Alayavijnana as the person, right? And the mind basis of all is the person. The followers of reasoning, mainly the followers of Dharmakirti, assert that the mental consciousness is the illustration of a person. So they, in the case of the followers of reasoning, they don't believe. They don't propose the idea of Alayavijnana, So when they are asked as to where is the self, where is the person, then they point to the mental consciousness, the 6th consciousness, which is mental. They point to mental consciousness and say that this is the person. Now my question to you, just ask yourself, where are you, or who are you? You might say, oh, I'm Kevin. Or you might say, I'm Chunyi, I'm Semje, so forth, right? My next question is, just point to where the self is. Is it pointable? The body or the mind? The mind. Next question. why mind? Why is the mind the self? Why is the mind the self? According to Prasangika, no, this is not the self. Even the mind is not the self. But Chittamantrins, according to the scripture follower Chittamantrins, the Alayavijnana is the self. According to the reasoning follower Chittamantrins, it is the sixth consciousness, the mental consciousness is the mind. So why? It's not just them, Everyone else, even the Swatantrika Madhyamikas, they point to the mental consciousness as the final example of the self, the person. So why do you think that they point to the mind as the self?
There's no external object. So the body,
Yeah.
the body is a phenomena perceived by the mind as an external object. From the Chittamantra.
No, so there is no need of external object. So the body, it does exist.
Yeah.
It is not external. So why not that is the self? Or why do they have to still stick to the idea that the mind is the self? Anyone?
It's also the only thing that goes forward. The body dies, the mind.
Good. Good. This is the response given by, the prominent Svatantrika Madhyamika philosopher by the name, the great master Bhava-viveka. Bhava-viveka, he said that, we would point to mind as a self because it is the mind which transmigrates to the next lives. He, just in one sentence, he explains to us as to why mind is the self. So he says, look, it's not that you are forced to say that, one of these two, the body or the mind should be the self. It's not that way. So he comes up with a very intelligent answer. He said, look, the person or the self, simply does not discontinue when you die this life. It continues the next lives. But then, if you really look there, the body does not continue to the next life. It is the mind which travels to the next life. Right? So, on the one hand, you say the self travels to the next life. On the other hand, we see it is only the mind which travels. So, if mind is not the self, where is the self traveling to the next life? So the mind is self. This is a wonderful, intelligent response from Bhava-viveka in his text by the name blazing of the reasonings. Blazing, so everything simply on the basis of reasons. Blazing of reasonings. In Sanskrit, it is tarka jwala, blazing of reasonings. Okay, so the mind is considered to be the self, the final example of the self, and according to the scripture follower Chittamantrins, it is the Alayavijnana, the basis of all consciousness, as the final example of the self. Now let's see. The followers of scripture assert that the mind basis of all observes the five senses, the five objects, and the eternal latencies. Okay, this is quite interesting. I don't know if I need to go in detail. We have 2 minutes left. Okay, let's put it this way. Now we have discussed so much about this, the mind basis of all, Alayavijnana, right? So what is it like? What is the object of that? Say when you speak about my eye consciousness, the object of my eye consciousness presently is a flower. So like that, what is the object of objects? Object or the objects of that mind, the basis of all consciousness. So it says that it observes the five senses, referring to the eye sense, nose sense, and so forth. 5 are the senses, and the 5 objects. The 5 objects referring to form, smell, sound, and so forth, and what? And the internal latencies, the imprints, right? And look, what we have to keep in mind is that is all the kind of senses and is all the kind of sense objects, the objects of this Alayavijnana. Now look, so in my case, you know, when I look at my body, say when I look at my hand, what is the object of my consciousness? It's my hand, you know. So this is what is this? This is physical form, or the sound, smell, what? Physical form. So whereas when I look at, you know, say the Kevin, so what is the object? Kevin, right? Okay. So whereas in the case of in the case of my eye consciousness, the objects can be varying. My own, the physical body, external someone else's physical body, or the physical body of some inanimate objects. But in the case of Alayavijnana, it's very different. Alayavijnana, say Alayavijnana of person A, right? So Alayavijnana of person A only observes the 5 senses of himself, not the 5 senses of others. 1. The 5 objects of himself, his own body, his own bodily smell, his own bodily taste, and what? The 5, you know, objects. And the internal latencies of oneself and not others. So everything, the objects, whether the senses, whether the objects, you know, or the internal latencies, they all should be of one's own, not someone else's, right? So this one, and I don't know if okay, yeah, it has further explanations. We'll read. A mind basis of all has the aspect of not discriminating its objects. It does not notice its objects and cannot induce another consciousness to notice objects. So say, when I look at a flower, you know, when I look at the flower, this flower, oh, it's so nice. Whereas when I look at this flower, oh, withering, you know. So I can easily discriminate the good and bad in these things. Whereas, say, someone who is suffering from autism, you know. So if you bring a very beautiful flower, what will it do? And say the disease is, you know, really acute. Very beautiful flower or, you know, horrible flower doesn't really make sense, make difference, you know. There is a lack of discrimination, mental discrimination. So Alayavijnana is like, you know, someone who's suffering from autism. You know, is really like a profound, vast ocean and quite sluggish. It's like, you know, just simply looking at things like that, observing, not really discriminating what is there, good, bad, like that. So, the mind basis of all has the aspect of not discriminating its objects. It does not notice its object and cannot induce another consciousness to notice objects. You know, so say, you know, you are very much kind of engrossed or enticed by a wonderful, your favorite song, you know, you are so driven over there, and someone is doing like this in front of your eyes. What will happen? You don't notice, you know. So you don't notice, and then afterwards, when you ask, what happened? You know, did someone come in front of you? I don't know. So you didn't really notice that, even though your eyes are wide open, but you didn't notice anything because of your obsession to that. So likewise, the Alayavijnana is not because of obsession to something else, but because of its dullness in its discrimination. It cannot discriminate anything. It cannot notice anything. You know, it simply observes. That's it. Okay, we stop here.